Well, Kelly, that's what I was thinking, is that when you drive by there, it looks like dirty wetlands, and oh my gosh, this is ripe for development. Why not fill it in and use the land?
Well, and that's the thing. It is the closest thing to wilderness that we have in the Quad Cities. It's not wilderness, but it's the closest thing that we have. It's one of the most biologically and ecologically diverse sites on the upper Mississippi River. And there's one reason for that. It's because it is, like you're saying, it is so wild and so untamed, basically. And if you want to keep that very rich diversity biologically, you have to keep the land wild. I mean, a lot of these species won't tolerate a lot of disturbance. The eagles being one of them, like John said, that was sort of the main focus of our opposition to this right from the start. Was, you know, you've got the largest documented night roost for bald eagles in the lower 48 states. So this is really special. It's not just a run-of-the-mill night roost, it's the largest one that's ever been found. And half of all the eagles that winter in the Quad Cities rely on that one site for night roosting. And night roosting eagles don't tolerate any type of human activity or disturbance.
I was going to say, explain that to me a little bit better. Night roosting is so critically important and so sensitive. Why?
Okay, so during the winter, a lot of people don't realize this, eagles have a hard time surviving the winter, especially young birds that haven't perfected their hunting skills or anything. But all eagles, I always say they walk a fine line, or I correct myself and say they fly a fine line between having enough energy to survive those lean winter months and not having enough and perishing. So the primary function of an eagle during the winter season is energy conservation. And communal night roosts are one of these habitat types that eagles are able to use in order to conserve energy. They gather communally in these areas. They're out of the way places because they're out of the way, so they're not being constantly disturbed by people. And they're usually oriented in such a way that they give the birds maximum shelter and protection. These floodplain night roosts like Milan Bottoms, the only type of area that will function as a floodplain night roost is you have to have a large, big patch of forest. And the birds get on the backside of that and they get maximum shelter and protection from the wind. I always tell people it's a lot like this. If you're walking along the river on a cold, windy winter day and you feel, and there's just a narrow strip of trees between you and the river, you feel the full force of the wind. It feels very cold. But if you're walking along the river behind a big patch of forest, the trees give you a lot of shelter and protection. It feels a lot warmer. Same thing applies to night roosting eagles. The problem is when they're in the night roost, they are extremely susceptible to being disturbed. And they undergo this process that's called fright flights, where a lot of times a disturbance will occur that'll cause one or two eagles to flush, and then they cause three or four others to flush, and then it's almost like a domino effect that'll ripple right through the roost. And that's our concern with this proposed development, is the impact it'll have on that night roost. The problem that we have is that the only environmental assessment, and this is the assessment that the city hangs their hat on, saying we've done our due diligence, that assessment is so inadequate and so flawed, and we've pointed out all the different areas that there's flaws in it. For instance, the entire environmental assessment was done without anybody ever visiting the site. So there's been no site surveys, nothing done. All they based the environmental assessment on is a desktop exercise where they pull up a database, and the database only includes species at the county level. So all the database can say is, well, this species occurs in Rock Island County. It doesn't say anything about Milan Bottoms specifically. And even in their environmental assessment, the Illinois DNR puts a disclaimer in there saying this assessment should in no way be a substitute for actual on-site field surveys or biological surveys that are required for environmental assessments. So even their own disclaimer, basically, they're saying, here's our opinion, but this should not be the end-all, be-all of it.